November's midterm elections are only 7 months away, and we're seeing many first-time candidates joining the race. Among them, quite a few Asian American candidates have caught attention, including Lanhee Chen, a Taiwanese American who's running for California's state controller position. Lanhee was born in North Carolina, and his parents moved to the United States from Taiwan to pursue graduate degrees and a better future, just like most of us. Then the family moved to California, where Lanhee grew up in the greater LA area. Lanhee drew media attention while serving as Mitt Romney's policy director during his presidential campaign in 2012 at the age of 33. He's now affiliated with Hoover Institute and is teaching at Stanford Law School. Today, we're so pleased to have this opportunity to speak to Lanhee. So Lanhee, what an exciting time to be running for an office right now. I think you and I talked about this about a year ago when you were still contemplating this idea. And I recall you saying, actually, running for an office is kind of the only way you think you can shape the kind of world you want to see. So what motivates you? And tell us, what exactly does a California state controller do?
Well, thank you for having me on. Thanks for the opportunity to share a little bit about my vision for California. My background is probably pretty similar to a lot of American-born Taiwanese. My parents came over from Taiwan in the 1970s. My father is a doctor. My mother is a chemist by training. And they came to the United States for opportunity. And I was raised and spent a lot of my childhood in California. And it was a wonderful upbringing. It's a wonderful place to be. I think in a lot of ways, California is really not the same as it was when I was growing up. I think it's a lot harder for families to settle and succeed here. Our economy isn't as strong as it once was. And I believe that my desire to do something about it, my interest in contributing back to America and to California, comes from the fact that I do have this immigrant background, and I am somebody who sees what America and California can be, the potential that we have. So I'm running to be California state controller. And what does the state controller do in California? Well, quite simply, the state controller is like the chief financial officer of the state of California, the chief fiscal officer. It's the person who's supposed to be giving people in California accountability for how our state is spending tax dollars. And I believe, unfortunately, we have far too much reckless spending in California, far too much spending that doesn't happen with transparency and accountability. And so I'm running really to restore that accountability and transparency to state government, but also to bring fiscal responsibility back to Sacramento. And I believe that given my background in public policy and academics, but also in business, can come together. And in a lot of ways, I'm the ideal candidate for this kind of a job, which is focused on the fiscal state of California. And so I'm very excited by this opportunity. I think there's a chance for me to be successful, and I'm looking forward to the campaign ahead.
You know, what's interesting about this race and about you in particular is people usually associate Asian Americans with Democratic Party. And of course, California is like our bluest state probably in the entire country. So do you think you have a chance running as a Republican? And how do you appeal to the voters when, California is considered so liberal and progressive?
I believe I do. I think just because I'm a Republican, people should still understand that really I think that the job of controller is not so much about being Republican or Democrat. It's really not a particularly ideological job. At the end of the day, it's a job where we want someone who's competent, who's got the right background and right experience and understands the issues that our state faces. And so I do think I have an opportunity because this is a kind of office where people are more focused on who's going to be able to do a good job managing our state's finances. It's not a particularly partisan position, but more importantly, I do think here in California, a lot of people are sick and tired of the same old politics. They believe that a lot of things in California are not going in the right direction. Our economy is not performing as well as it could be. We have a homelessness crisis. We have a public safety crisis. We have housing that's unaffordable in this state.
So I think here, help people understand, because usually the world looks at California as sort of the golden state, right? People's image of California is like sunshine and, people live a good life, beaches, beautiful places. But, what in your mind needs to be improved? Or to be honest, like what's going on in California?
Well, it is an incredible state. We have so many natural resources. We have beautiful mountains. We have a wonderful coastline. We have great weather. There are a lot of things about California that are wonderful. But the living conditions in California, I mentioned I grew up in California. The living conditions we see today in California, I think, are so different. Things are so much more expensive. We do have anybody who has been to California recently, to major cities like Los Angeles or San Francisco, they have seen the homelessness crisis. It is right there in front of our eyes. And so my point is that the Golden State has become a little bit tarnished, I think. And I believe the challenge we have in California is that we don't spend money responsibly. We don't have any accountability around how the state is spending any of this money. I'll give you an example. In 2018, California spent $300 billion, and we don't have any sense of exactly where that money was spent. The state cannot produce basically a checkbook. If you think about your own family's finances, you keep track of how much you're spending pretty carefully. If you own a business, you keep track of your expenditures very closely. The state of California doesn't do that. And as a result, we end up with massive amounts of spending on things that we're really not getting a great return on. Consider, for example, California's schools. When I was growing up, California's public schools were some of the best in the country. Now they're some of the worst. And so my point is the accountability we should have for spending. Yes, California is a great state, and we can be better. But the problem is we're not performing, I believe, at potential because of the fact that we don't have accountability around spending. And I think that is a big reason why California today is not as a great a place for people want to come as it was, let's say, 15 or 20 years ago.
I definitely agree with you, especially the public school system. It is almost astonishing for people to see how bad it is right now. So you have really identified a lot of the key problems in California right now. I think everyone would agree with you. The question is, why you, right? So if anyone looks at your background, you're so impressive. You have 4 degrees from Harvard, BA, MA in public policy, and then PhD in political science, and then a law degree, right? You've been in the policy world, you're so articulate, you can literally do anything you want. You probably should have been a lawyer, for a lot of parents, right? So that kind of world is different from politics. So how are you going to convince people that in addition to knowing policies at the intellectual level, that you actually know how to get things done?
Yeah. Well, I've had a number of different experiences in my life, both inside politics and outside of politics. And you're right, I've been very fortunate to have the opportunity to get a very good education, to learn from some of the best. And then the last several years teaching as a member of the faculty at Stanford University, being a fellow at the Hoover Institution, I had a chance to think about all sorts of different issues. But the reason why I can do this job is, first of all, I have worked with some of the best leaders, I think, in recent history in our country.
Tell us who are your mentors?
I had the opportunity to work for President George W. Bush when he was president. I worked with him on healthcare policy issues. I had the chance to serve as the chief policy advisor to Mitt Romney when he was the Republican nominee for president. And I've had a long-term relationship with Senator Romney and consider him both a friend and a mentor. I've worked with Marco Rubio, a senator here in the US, who is probably pretty well known to audiences in Taiwan because of his strong stance on Taiwan. I believe I've helped to shape the understandings and experiences of a lot of different policymakers in the US about the importance of the US-Taiwan relationship over the years. So I've had a chance to work with some of these really, really great public officials, but I've also had great experience managing my own team of people. I managed a team of thousands of people when I worked for Mitt Romney in looking at all the different people who wanted to play some role in policy on the campaign. I was the person responsible for managing that entire effort. In the last several years, I've had business experience. I've built my own small business here in California that's focused on providing policy advisory work. I've been the chairman of the board of $1 billion health system here in Northern California. So I've applied my experience. I'm not just somebody who studied about these issues. I've actually had a chance to apply them in business and real life. And I think that that's really what makes me unique as a candidate for this office, is combining the experience in academics, in policymaking, and in business. And I think that's what our next controller here in California has to have. That person has to have experience across all of these things, because California is a complex state and the issues we face are very complex as well.
So coming back to your family, your background, how do your parents feel about this? They, well, even starting, let's go all the way back when you started getting involved in politics. We know Asian parents, they probably, again, wish you were a lawyer, a doctor, whatever. How did they feel about your passion in politics and policy?
Well, I think they've known for a long time I've been interested in U.S. politics. And, I often said, listen, just because there aren't very many people who look like me involved in politics, particularly on the Republican side, that didn't stop me from wanting to pursue this career and wanting to pursue all of this. I think they were initially a little bit skeptical. I think they were kind of wondering, how is this going to go? We really don't know anybody who's walked this path. You don't have people who are in your network or who are mentors who've done this before. So I had to really go and create that network for myself. And over time, I was the only Asian American. I was certainly the only Taiwanese American working in a lot of these different environments. And I was very proud of my background and very proud of the upbringing I had. And I'm very thankful to my parents that they gave me the education and instilled in me the values that I needed to do the work I do. But it's definitely not something that a lot of Taiwanese American kids in my generation, people who grew up in my age, not a lot of people did this kind of work. And so for me, it was really about breaking barriers that I thought needed to be broken, really going out there and showing people I could do just as good of a job, if not better, than anybody else. And I'm very fortunate now to have this opportunity to run for office and to be able to formulate and talk about my own vision for what I think will make California better. And I'm excited by the opportunity, and I think we've got a great shot to make history here in California.
That's exciting. And how do you actually enjoy this whole process, the campaign process, the fundraising, the actual getting on TVs, which I know you do a lot, you did a lot already. But just, tell us what it's like to mobilize, to organize.
Well, it's very exciting because, as I said, I think we're creating a real movement here. I had the opportunity to talk today to interns on my campaign. We've got a lot of college and high school students who are super excited about this campaign and about the kind of vision that we're putting forward for California's future. I love that. I love being able to mentor the next generation of Asian American kids, Taiwanese American kids, but also kids of all backgrounds who want to get involved in politics. I'm very excited by that opportunity. I love being able to talk about the message of accountability and transparency and the things I want to bring to state government. I'll say, campaigning is hard work too, and being away from my family and having to take time to go and campaign. I wish I didn't have to do that, and I wish I could spend more time with them. But it's so important for me to be able to get my message out there, for us to be able to visit with ordinary, everyday Californians. That's a very, very important element of this campaign. And so that does require me to be out on the road. And so we're going to do what we need to do to be successful. But look, not everything is perfect. Not everything is as I would want it to be. But I am excited by this opportunity. I'm energized by it. And as I said, I think we're putting together an effort that can win this year. How
did you tell your kids what their dad is doing?
Yeah, well, my kids are 11 and 8. I have an 11-year-old boy and an 8-year-old girl, and they're old enough now, I think, that they can kind of understand a little bit of, what dad is doing. I actually, we got them involved in some stuff very early on in the campaign. We did a campaign video where we took shots of them and us playing in the backyard. And I'm trying to the extent I can to involve them in events going forward when I can. We haven't had too many opportunities so far, but we're hoping that we'll be able to have those opportunities. And I want my kids to understand that they can do it too. That the great thing about America as a country is there is opportunity available to do things that people in previous generations didn't do. My parents, when they came to the US 50 years ago, probably would never have envisioned their son being involved in elective politics, standing for election as a candidate for statewide office in California. But I want my kids to be able to see through my example that anything is possible. And so I'm encouraged by the fact that they get to see that. It's not always going to be easy when I'm not away from when I'm not here, when I'm away from home. It's not always going to be easy, but I do hope that they can see that it's an effort that they're part of as well, and that together we can make positive change here in California.
And well, your election is going to coincide with the midterm elections at the national level. Now, switching the hat as a pundit, tell us how you think about the midterm elections.
Yeah. Well, historically in America, the first midterm election for a new president is always very difficult for the president. The president, traditionally, his party loses seats in Congress. Barack Obama lost seats when he was first elected in that first midterm election, which for him was 2010. Donald Trump lost seats in 2018. And so a lot of people believe that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party are going to lose seats in Congress in 2022. And I think certainly in all the data I've seen, that is consistent with, I think, with what's going to happen. I think a lot of people, as I said earlier, are frustrated with what's going on in our country. We have record high inflation. We're seeing a lot of economic pressure in this country. We're seeing around the world challenges created by what's happening with Russia and Ukraine. The constant threat posed to Taiwan is something that here in the US, people are definitely aware of. And so I think as a result, people aren't that satisfied with how Joe Biden has been doing. They're not satisfied necessarily with how a lot of Democrats are doing in Congress. So I do think that for Republicans here in the US, and California, by the way, is no exception to this, I think Republicans are going to do very well this year. I think you're going to see Republicans with a very good chance of retaking control of both the US House of Representatives and the US Senate. I think you're going to see a lot of places around the country where Republicans are going to do very well. And in fact, I'm kind of counting on that for my election. I do think that because Republicans have a tailwind behind them, it does create opportunities for Republican candidates that wouldn't have existed, didn't exist in 2020 or 2018. So I do think this is going to be a very good cycle for Republican candidates.
That's good. So what would you do in the first 100 days? And most importantly, because I know your campaign has been about accountability, how would you grade yourself, evaluate your performance, if that's so important, on the 100th day of you being in the office?
Well, my performance so far as a candidate, I think has been okay. I would give myself a solid B. Okay. I would say that my mantra.
That's harsh.
My mantra is every single day I try to get a little bit better at what I do. And this is the first time I've run for office. This is the first time I've been a candidate. I've watched a lot of candidates run for office. I've advised a lot of candidates running for office. Mm-hmm. This is the first time I'm doing it myself. And I do think that there are things we're doing well and some things we could probably improve on. That having been said, when I take office, that first 100 days is going to be very busy. The first thing I want to do is I want to build a fully searchable and machine readable database of California state spending. I want any person to be able to go online or get an app on their phone and be able to search what does the state spend money on, mm-hmm. and provide true transparency around that. The other thing the controller is able to do is the controller has the power to audit any state agency or any local agency like a school district. And so we're going to go in and we're going to start at the top of the budget, look at what we're spending the most amount of money on, and start auditing every program to determine what's going on, to give taxpayers in California answers. And I hope after 100 days, we're going to have at least a few of those audits complete so we can report back to the people of the state of California, here's what's going on, here's how your money is being spent. The last thing I want to talk about in that first 100 days is I want to start giving letter grades to programs. You talk about giving me a letter grade. I want to give letter grades to programs and spending and say, how effective and efficient has this spending been? And I think being able to do that will help California taxpayers understand, hey, how effective is public policy in California? And if it's not effective, they can demand changes of policymakers who can go in and make different kinds of decisions. So I've got a very ambitious agenda, as you can tell, but it's something that I feel very passionately about. My background in public policy gives me the experience to be able to say, here are the things we need to do. And I'm confident that when I win and when I take office, we're going to be able to do a large number of those things.
So last question, how do you think your upbringing as a Taiwanese American helped you today?
Yeah, well, I am very, very fortunate, I think, to first of all, have parents that came from Taiwan, and to have a certain work ethic, to have a certain importance of value of education, value of family, value of responsibility, taking responsibility for yourself and your actions. Those are all things that were part of my upbringing that I think a lot of your viewers will understand. They're values that are shared by so many people in Taiwan, people of Taiwanese descent here in the US, people of broader Asian American descent here in the US certainly understand those values. And I think one of the great things too was it gave me a great appreciation. The fact that I came from immigrant parents and had an immigrant background helped me to see just how remarkable of a place America is. You know, Taiwan's developed a lot during the period of time since my parents have been gone.
When was the last time you visited Taiwan?
2020. I actually went right before the pandemic hit. I went as part of a delegation to observe Taiwan's presidential election in 2020. And I learned so much about Taiwan's democracy and how strong it is, and really how impressive it is to see the amount of transparency. I talk about transparency. The level of transparency in elections in Taiwan is remarkable. The votes are counted right there in front of everybody. So there doesn't seem to be much room for doubt about the legitimacy of elections in Taiwan. And that's a great lesson that I think the world can learn from Taiwan. So I was there recently. I've always been a huge fan of Taiwanese food, and I love the food. Nilomia, I love eating the gubami when I go back to Taiwan. It's awesome. And so I look forward to the next time I can go. I don't know when that will be, by the way, with the pandemic and with this election and how busy I am. I'm looking forward to that. But your question was really about, you know, my upbringing and the values that I got, and really having parents that came from Taiwan and seeing the remarkable progress that Taiwan has made, but also how successful so many Taiwanese Americans have been. It's just a great culture and a great society to be a part of. And I've had the opportunity to meet with and talk to so many Taiwanese Americans who are supporting my campaign. And I would encourage more who aren't familiar with me to go to my website, find out more about what I'm trying to do, because I really do think that this is an opportunity, not just for me, but for the Taiwanese community in the US, for the Asian American community in the US, to really have a voice here in California and a representative who understands their community and the issues that are important.
I'm sure a lot of people can relate to your experience and are, you know, just pleased to see that you as a Taiwanese American is running. So we wish you the best of luck. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us.
Thank you. Thank you, Wenqi.